One of the important things about web page is the ability to link to other pages. And really these are the most important parts because this is where there's great value in driving your users to pages inside of your web page, other web pages. But one of the things about it is, how do we make these interesting and beautiful? And really just from the tactical standpoint of just having a link. I added some link code here into my page. And all it is a standard link code that says ahref, looking for a page, text.html, and test. If I reload it onto multiple browsers, it's not so interesting. It's just blue text. I really want to stylize this. I've zoomed in to make it easier for us to read. And you realize that that's not a sexy, cool looking URL link. So let's do something interesting with them. In one of the other chapters, we'll look at making them really interesting. But for right now, why don't we go in and look at what we can do with this anchor link. The first thing we want to do is let's use the color attribute that we learned, or the font attribute. So what we can do is let's go back to our style guide. And I'm actually going to, in the links, add in a basic link. There's actually 4 variations we want to work on. The first one is just a basic anchor link. The other second variation would be visited. And the third variation will be hover. There's one that's actually a variation called active, but it really depends on, a lot of times JavaScript uses that, but I kind of like these both as something that, that we're going to use right now. We're going to first start with the first link. Visited is inherently the color that once you visited this before, if it's in the cache, it changes the color, and hover. I usually use the first anchor link and hover as kind of my go-to changes. Again, first thing I'm going to do to make sure that I can specify that I am tweaking the right code, I'm just going to do my red color attribute that I'm famous for. Here you go. I've changed the color red, but really let's make this really, really interesting. How about we go back to that nice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 color, just a little bit dark blue. I changed the color, not so interesting. But one of the things I can do is begin to say, well, what if I wanted to take the underline off? Let's say text decoration, add in a new line, text decoration goes off, I reload the page. Now it looks like a really nice crisp word that happens to be a link. But if you notice that the little hand goes over it, meaning that this is an active link, this is where the hover state comes in. Not done just yet. Let's still mess around with this. In the previous section, we looked at creating a font family. So why don't we even do something as interesting as, how about we make all of our links a nice font face? I reload my page. Look at that. That looks like a cool looking link. I would want to click on it. How about I even call this test link? I reload the page again. That looks pretty awesome. I would really want to click that. I'd probably want to make this a little bit bluer. So why don't we even change some of these colors really quickly to see what happens. That looks a little bit darker. Maybe we'll just change this to be a little bit darker. Well, it's a little bit in the red section, but maybe, we can even go in and open up a hex code color. But still, the idea is making our links pretty interesting. I might even want to change the font size so that it's just slightly larger than normal, maybe 15 pixels if I'm using pixels versus ems. I reload the page. That looks pretty cool. But again, I still haven't solved my problem of what happens when this is active. So this is where the hover state comes in. And one of the things I'll do in the hover state is we can actually apply the color attribute. And how about just to test it, I'm going to type in the color attribute yellow. I reload the page, and now when I hover it, it is nice and yellow. That's really cool. Might not be yellow, but maybe I'll use my special dark blue color. I reload it, and there you go. Well, one of the great things about links is that you really want to give a hint to the user that this is a link. And from a user experience standpoint, one of the easiest things to do is provide an underline. So now I can use my text decoration. I copy it in, and what do I put in? Underline. I reload the page, and now look at that. I have an underlined text. But it doesn't mean that I can just actually make it underlined. Remember, this is a different CSS state. So if I really wanted to, let's not get too crazy here. What if we change the font size to something small? Then it's really, I'm having fun with the page. This is where we can begin to use user actions to make things really dynamic. I mean, we can get crazy as saying, this is 30. That's a nice big link. And what if we even change the font family to something completely different? Why don't we just use Arial for fun? I reload the page, and now that just really throws me off. Really the goal of the hover state and beginning sort of using of links is this is just the tipping point at having user interaction change the page to something dynamic. And you notice that if I go back to the code, I haven't done anything. I haven't added any classes. I haven't added anything specific to change it. Well, let's say if I want to use multiple links. I'm just going to put in multiple links here. I'm going to reload it. And this is getting kind of fun. If you look at these links together, doesn't this look like a basic piece of navigation? This is where I can start using these hover links to create a navigation bar. So if I really wanted to, and this is just me playing right now in my style guide, because again, part of my style guide is me experimenting with how links are going to work, colors are going to work, headers and paragraphs. I might even say, how about in a paragraph called ID equals, and again, I'm just kind of getting crazy. I'm just trying some new examples and say ID nav. I might even say nav, and I'm just going to use that famous background attribute red, or how about we use black. Again, I'm just testing here. I reload, and now I have an interesting piece that looks like a navigation bar. So really, this is a lot of fun that I can have. I mean, maybe I get rid of the font size. Maybe I get rid of the font family. Maybe I make this white and reload it. Now that looks like a navigation bar, doesn't it? So again, all I'm doing is working with CSS. I haven't done anything, any other major code in the HTML. I've kept the code as simple as possible. Now the CSS is doing the heavy lifting for me. And that's really the goal of this. We're going to do a lot more next with padding and margins for us to begin to really start adjusting what the CSS looks like and start making this into a real page. I could, if I wanted to, have actually added a class to change one of these, but for right now, this is a great start.